$50,000 for keeping my neighborhood dry. That's how this circus started one day. You're the guy who quietly solves a problem nobody else can figure out. Next thing you know, the HOA's slapping you with a fine big enough to make your eyes water, all because you dared to build something that actually worked. Amy Scott, our HOA president and part-time legal tornado, handed me that court order like she was serving the final slice of humble pie lawyer standing next to her, both waiting for my house to drown just so they could say, "We told you so." You ever had someone warn you not to mess with authority, and deep down you know they're about to learn something too? Yeah, Amy, I learned plenty, but not the lesson you hoped. Let me back up a sec. Gravity doesn't care about your bylaws or landscaping budgets. My place sits at the bottom of our cul-de-sac, and every spring for 8 straight years, Mother Nature reminded me what that meant. There's a creek behind my fence, and whenever a real storm rolls in, that little creek swells up like it's angry at the world, dumps a small lake right in my backyard, and all that water barrels straight toward my basement. Robert, my neighbor on the left, same story, 2 houses, both drowning in everybody else's runoff. We had a system, kind of a spring ritual with wet vacs and profanity, the kind of tradition that really makes you question your life choices. Folks up in the middle section, where Amy lives, never seem to get it. "Have you considered better drainage?" they'd say, sipping their coffee while we stood in boots 2 inches deep. Yeah, sure, let me just convince water to flow uphill. The idea for the dam hit me during one of those downpours, thunder cracking, pumps screaming, and I thought, heck, I spent 40 years as an electrician systems. Water's no different than electricity. It finds the path of least resistance, and if you build storage, you control the chaos. So I scoped the creek's choke point, drafted a simple retention wall, concrete, and common sense, nothing fancy. Robert and I spent 3 weekends laying that foundation, pouring sweat and coffee and a little hope into that dam. It wasn't some $1 million fix, just enough to catch the stormwater, hold it until the pressure eased, then let it drain out slow, not all at once. Next big storm, no flood. Basement stay dry. Lawns usable. Suddenly, life at the bottom of the hill wasn't a disaster, it was peaceful. That lasted 3 years. 3 solid, glorious, dry years. Then last Tuesday, showed up like a bad joke. Certified letter. $50,000 fine for building an unauthorized water management structure. I read it 3 times, thought maybe someone was pranking Minope. Amy had moved faster than a spring flood. Her complaint went from HOA meeting to city code enforcement at record speed. She even called it a public safety hazard to bypass permit reviews, which, if you know legalese, means she knew exactly which levers to pull to make my life miserable. Our neighborhood split right down the elevation line. Me and Robert, we love those dry basements. Amy and her crew, higher up and always dry anyway, couldn't fathom why we'd mess with the natural order. I started feeling like I was cast as the villain in their little story, all because I wouldn't just let my house get trashed once a year. Then, a twist: Harold's old envelope showed up. Harold was president before Amy, and apparently, he'd been worried about drainage since '95, scribbling notes and diagrams all over old neighborhood maps. His nephew David slipped me those documents, said Harold wanted someone to have them if anything happened to the dam. Divine timing, honestly. What got under my skin was realizing I'd only ever worried about my end of the problem, never really thought where all that water wound up after it left my yard. But Harold had. His notes flagged the middle section Amy's zoning as a future risk area, not ours. That made 0 sense at first, but the more I dug, the more I saw a weird pattern. Amy was absolutely obsessed with getting rid of my dam. She hired Linda Wilson, a civil engineer with more credentials than I could list, to do a full-blown technical assessment. Thought maybe, finally, we'd get some objective truth. Linda rolled in all business surveying gear, hard hat, attitude like she owned the place. She grilled me about every inch of the dam, how it performed, what happened during heavy rains. Her calculations showed my little project was doing exactly what I said. It cut peak flows by 60%, kept basements dry, didn't flood anyone downstream. But Linda got weird. She visited the upstream section again and again, took measurements like she was mapping for NASA. She set up weather monitors, rain gauges, the works, then left all the stuff about infrastructure limits out of her report. I mean, her official document said my dam was fine, but skipped over the bottleneck in the drainage system that Harold had highlighted years ago, the exact bottleneck running under Amy Street. Robert noticed it too. Linda wasn't just assessing safety. She was gathering data for something bigger. And then Amy, she used Linda's report to slap on another $25,000 fine for consulting an unauthorized engineer, no less. The irony was wild, suggested Linda in the first place. I started thinking, is this about safety at all? Or is there a game here I'm not seeing? Then the real kicker, David's house gets broken into. Nothing stolen except Harold's flood documents, no computers, no cash, just those papers. That's not random. That's someone cleaning up evidence. And wouldn't you know, right as a historic spring storm is forecast to hit, the city orders my dam demolish it in Amy's legal say-so. I fought as best I could, filed every report, called the city, documented everything. But court orders don't care about logic. I hired a crew to tear it down the day before the rain hit, and moved my family up to my brother's house on the ridge to watch it all unfold. Cameras set, coffee brewing, and nothing to do but wait. And what do you know, Harold was right. The bottom flooded, sure, but it drained like it always had before. But Amy's middle section, the water hit that old 1960s concrete tunnel, jammed up like a clogged artery, and then the real flood started. Lawns disappeared. Basements filled up. Even Linda's fancy equipment went under. Which, yeah, karma is a funny thing. My time-lapse video caught the whole mess, proof that water follows gravity and physics, not bylaws or wishful thinking. Insurance companies got involved, city engineers showed up, and suddenly the story shifted. Harold's old maps, those that weren't stolen, showed this exact disaster was predicted years ago. Even better, an audio tape surfaces Harold again, quietly recording a meeting where Amy and Linda talk openly about engineering acceptable flood damage so they could qualify for federal grant money to redevelop their properties. Turns out, the whole mess wasn't about safety. It was about cashing and buying up cheap, flood-risk homes, sabotaging the dam, then waiting for the perfect disaster strike so they could claim relief funds and flip those properties for a killing. The city's independent investigation put it all together. The dam was sound, the drainage system was junk, and the flood was engineered as much by greed as by rain. Amy lost her seat, Linda lost her license, and our neighborhood? Well, we got new bylaws, mandatory third-party engineering reviews, and a hard-won appreciation for the difference between real expertise and professional snake oil. I rebuilt the dam with full permits and city oversight, this time with everyone watching. That pond's still out there, holding back spring storms, while the old bottleneck is finally being replaced. Property values at the bottom are up. Amy's place? Not so much. So, let me ask you, have you ever watched so-called experts engineer a disaster for their own gain? Ever seen an HOA put politics above common sense? Drop your thoughts in the comments, tell me where you're watching from, and share your own stories about justice, karma, or just plain old neighborly drama. Because sometimes gravity does more than move water, it exposes the truth, no matter how hard some folks try to dam it up.